first and foremost, said it before, I'll say it again and again and again, get yourself a Bentley. There's a few different versions, so just double check before you buy them. For example, this is 77 to 82 diesel, Rabbit Cheddar, covers the pickup too. Whereas this one's 75 to 79, Rabbit and Scirocco. So, pretty cheap, get them on eBay. Alright, let's talk tools. Not that there's many special tools, given the ages of these cars. Newer cars, there's all sorts of special tools that the dealers use. But on these cars, I wouldn't really call them special tools, but they are certain things you need that won't come in your standard toolkit. It's in shambles right now, so don't mind that. But between that fold-up toolbox and that tool bag, I can fit all my stuff and bring it with me on the go. This stuff even fits behind the driver's seat in my caddy, so that's a definitely good way to portray that you don't need too much, but you do. There are certain things that you're going to want to buy if you're going to take on motor swaps or any kind of extensive maintenance on these. So these are kind of the special things that I had to buy separately, or things that I ended up getting doubles of, as well as things that I just use, you know, size sockets that I use frequently. For starters, you're gonna want some kind of 200 or 300 piece kit. I'll throw a link in the description and also list off some of these things to kind of make it easier to keep track of. I forget exactly which one I have, but I'll put a link to that. There's better ones out there, but this one definitely got me a pretty good head start on. Then the rest of this stuff I just kind of pieced together over time. But you got your 2 torque wrenches. I would recommend getting, you got a 3/8 drive and then the larger 1/2-inch drive. You're gonna need the smaller one for stuff like the cam caps, and then you'll need this to do the head bolts. You should kind of have these, and you really won't need them often on a Mark 1, but if you're working on other stuff, they're good to have. Wrenches, like I said, you're going to want to get a standard toolkit, which will have just about all of these. But the 2 most frequently used, I would say, or at least the ones that you're going to want doubles of, are the 19s and the 17s. Sometimes you'll need 2 of the 15s, but for sure you're going to want doubles of those. The strut bolts, where the strut coilover bolts onto like where the coilover bolts on. It's hard to see up here. You know, I forget exactly which is which, but you've got one is a 17 on one side and then a 19 on the other, and then the other is like 2 19s or 2 17s, I forget, but you know, stuff like that you're going to want 2 wrenches for, or a wrench and a socket. You could also get by with just one of each, and then one of each size in like a deep socket. So I've got 17 and 19 here. So like I said, that stuff will all come in your any kind of decent toolkit. If you're going to buy stuff separately, just a regular old like 8mm up to 19mm will hold you over pretty far. You know, you get that in a whole set by itself. You don't have to buy a whole toolkit. Same thing for the sockets, but you're gonna want to go down to even a 7mm. Like for the turn signals, takes an 8mm on these late Westies, but there's interior stuff that's gonna take even a 7mm, which is kind of uncommon. But if you get something like this kit goes all the way down from a 5mm, it goes all the way down to 5, and I think even a 4 and a 4.5 and stuff. So like I said, any decent toolkit will have all this stuff. You can buy it separately if you want, but it adds up quickly. I think I paid like, I forget how much, it was like $200-300 or something like that. But like I was saying, same thing for the sockets. You want some shallow and deep sockets. So at the lowest end, you'll need like a 7mm deep up to about a 19mm. And again, any decent toolkit will have both shallow and deep sockets. Mine in particular has more shallow sockets. You'll have to pick and choose as you go. I can't really sit here and break down exactly which you need. I spend all week working on the car, checking bolts and workspace. Now the special sizes, the odd ones, Start off with this 24 millimeter 6-point, and you're going to use that for your steering wheel. That's about the only thing I've ever needed it for. I don't think there's anything else on the car that takes this 24 mil, but it's got to be a 6-point or a 12-point. 12-point will work too. And for those who aren't sure, that's 12-point, that's 6-point. So 12 or 6-point is fine on the 24 mil. You're going to need that if you're going to take off your steering wheel, put a different one on, or to do your ignition switch, which always seems to fail on these, or really anything from the steering wheel to the firewall that's steering related. To take off the dash, you might be able to get the dash off with the steering wheel on. I'm almost positive you can't though, so to get the dash out, you're going to need that. Also, the 30 mil 12-point. I think you could get away with a 6-point in some cases, but there are axle nuts that are 12-point. So I think you're best off just getting a 12-point. And what you need that for is the main outer axle bolt. In this particular case, a 6-point would be better. You have less chance of rounding off the bolts, but I've never had any major issues with a 12-point. Spark plug socket, 13/16, pretty much the standard for Mark 1. ABA takes I think takes a smaller one, but again, any decent toolkit's gonna have both in it. So, but in case you're wondering, I mean, they're pretty cheap, so it doesn't hurt to have multiple sizes anyways if you're the kind of person who likes to tinker with stuff. Pretty standard, again, came with the toolkit. 1/4 inch 3/8, 1/2 inch drive. Bought the breaker bar separately. So, just like the sockets and wrenches can come in a set, your Allen head bits will do the same. I think these ones, I don't have the whole kit out, but these all came in one kit. It was like 5 millimeter up to 10, so it was like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the two ones that you'll need if you're yanking the motor out or working on the motor, really the main two that come to mind are 6 millimeter, which would be the 6 millimeter would be these water pump bolts. It's the same on the Mark 1, or the basically the accessory belt pulleys will require that 6, or if somebody changed out those bolts, it might be a different size, but they should be Allen head bolts of some size. So it's good to just buy one of those sets that has a whole range of sizes. You can buy them separately online though if you want to save a few bucks. 8 mil you're going to need for the starter bolts. I already took the starter off this car, but the 2 bolts that go through the starter and the starter bolts to the transmission there usually or supposed to be an 8 millimeter 6-point. And while we're on the topic of that, we've also got a 17 millimeter 6-point, and that's mainly used for 2 different things: filling and draining the transmission plugs. Taking the transmission fill and drain plugs out, and then also this motor's covered up. They're already plugged up, but your injector cups into the head will go in there, and they're usually a 17 or similar size, but you've got your plastic injector cup, and then the actual fuel injector pushes into that cup. So the way to remove those is usually a 17. I know I'm pretty sure there's 2 different sizes. Same thing with this though. I bought this as a set. It came with like 3 other sizes, usually smaller. I got that at AutoZone. So as I'm editing this video, I'm just second guessing the exact size of, like, for example, that injector plug socket size. I feel like it might be a little smaller. I'm just not 100% sure about that. So I just wanted to chime in and say, don't hold me to everything we're talking about here. This is really just supposed to be used as a rough guide for those new people that aren't sure exactly what it's going to take to work on these. So, you know, that kind of applies to other tools and sizes. If you go and just Google the job you're trying to perform, for those actually digging into stuff, if you just Google the job you're trying to perform, you'll find more detailed write-ups with the exact sizes of the tools that you'll need and whatnot. So, again, don't hold me to anything. Just use this as a rough guide. Also, check the comments down below, because often some of you awesome people following and watching are chiming in with additional info or corrected info as they've done with past videos. So thank you to you guys. Shout out to those chipping in and helping build this database. So yeah, I just wanted to chime in and add that. Also, you've got this 12 point or however many point. I forget the size even. I don't even know if this is it on the side. But all those part sites that we spoke about in the last video, most of them have this bit. And what it's used for is to get the inner bolts for the axles off. So you got 6 bolts here that bolt up to the flange on the transmission. So you're going to want one of those, as well as some extensions so you can actually reach it. But back to the toolkit. Any decent toolkit will have multiple extensions. You know, to reach the passenger side, you need a good 2-foot extension or so. Just makes your life easier. You could do without them, but whatever. Try not to get too sidetracked here. Like I said, I'll post a link in the description for this when I forget the sizing, and I don't know. This doesn't ring a bell if that is the sizing on there. But pretty standard. Like I said, all the websites will have it. And similar to that, we've got this M12, 12 point or whatever. I forget. But you're going to need this for these cylinder head bolts. And because they're down there a bit, because they're sunken down a bit, you're going to need an extension for that. Or you could buy these bits with as a, you know, as an extended bit, just like these Allen head ones. But just a decent extension will get you going too. Like I said, that's if you're going to be taking the head off or retorquing the head or removing the head. I can't find the one I already made, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to use to make the new one. We've got an old push rod from a transmission. And what that is goes into... What that is it goes into the transmission there. When you pull up the clutch, when you push in the clutch, this gets pulled up and pushes and disengages the clutch. So what you do is you take an old push rod and you want to cut a notch in it, just like you see on this old distributor I have here. Because what happens is, distributor sits down, there's a gear on the shaft there that ultimately gets driven by the timing belt and spins the distributor, which in turn spins the oil pump. Now, you basically want to make a tool that you can latch onto that oil pump. Because if you're assembling a motor, or a motor's been sitting for a long time, you want to remove the distributor, get that tool down on there with a power drill, and spin that oil pump, basically priming the oil pump and getting it ready so you're not starting the engine dry, and you've got the oil pump primed as best you can. That's an absolute must-have. You can buy this tool, I believe. If so, I will double check and put a link if you don't feel like dealing with having to make one of these. This would be a little bit of a pain in the ass, but you know, free 99, can't really beat it. If you don't have a transmission kicking around, you know, if you don't have a spare transmission kicking around, I don't blame you for buying one either. So, like I said, that's a must-have if you're going to be assembling a motor, or if you have a motor sitting around a long time that you're going to install and you want to make sure it's got oil pressure before you waste your time and money. Feeler gauges, I mean, we spoke about that in the valve adjustment video, pretty self-explanatory. If you're not sure, go back a couple videos. I did one just regarding valve adjustment on a solid lifter head. It's also a shifter alignment tool. I've only ever had to use this once, but if you're gonna go spending money buying all the special tools you might need, you'll need this if you're rebuilding or realigning your shift linkage. if you're doing a 4 to 5 speed swap, then this will help you align your shift linkage. You can also use a cassette tape, like a whatever. We won't even go into that. And that pretty much covers it. Aside from that, the fender liners and the fender flares are usually held on with Torx bits, which are similar to an Allen key, but 6-point, star pattern like that. Just some cheap Allen wrench will get you going, but if you want to be better about it, you could buy these. You could buy these in the same sort of tool style as these, as like an actual socket bit, whatever you want to call it. Also, any decent drill bit set will have those. You'll see I have a few sizes here. Like that one works for the fender liners, makes quick work of getting those out rather than dealing with it by hand with that stupid thing. Like I said, that'll get you going though. And then the rest of this stuff is just kind of regular generic tool stuff that anyone should really have. Obviously, screwdrivers, adjustable wrench, vice grips. This is a pretty light duty one, but you could buy a set of vice grips. It comes in different sizes and shapes and whatnot. Always good to have those. Those have gotten me home before. Channel lock. It's best to have a multimeter, especially if you're going to stay CIS, because there's certain things where you need a multimeter if you're going to diagnose CIS or tune it. But at the very least, a test light will get you better than nothing. If you're trying to diagnose, find a short in your wires, it's a few bucks. Doesn't hurt to have it. Lastly, we have the Get It Done in a Pinch kit. The ever famous purse. You always need a good purse handy. Well, I wouldn't say this is really get you home stuff, but anti-seize, don't be a hack. Do yourself a favor. Certain bolts you do want to put anti-seize on. JB Weld, pretty self-explanatory. That's gotten me home before. Sometimes you can't wait or can't find a gasket. Doesn't hurt to have a gasket maker. For the bolts that you don't want moving, you're gonna want some Loctite. If you're doing a clutch, all those bolts with the clutch assembly, like we've mentioned before, you're gonna want to Loctite those. Even though you torque them to spec, it does not hurt to Loctite them. Well, actually, it does hurt if you don't Loctite them. RTV, seal up whatever you gotta do. And then some safety wire and safety wire pliers. Don't really need the pliers, but some safety wire never hurts to have. Only thing missing from this kit is a nice big bag of zip ties. Maybe some duct tape. Zip ties have gotten me home before. So that pretty much covers it. I'm sure there's some stuff I'm forgetting, like always, but this stuff paired with a decent toolkit and all sorts of other pliers and your standard tools, doesn't really take much. Between that toolbox and that bag, I can fit everything I need to pretty much do anything on the side of the road, short of having like an engine lift or whatever have you. Next up, we are going to start doing motor swaps, at least stock for stock. I know you guys are sick of hearing me say that, but as you see, we're already doing it. This is already out, I know, don't worry, because this motor's got to go in here. The motor that's in there has to come out and go in the dumpster, and then that motor there has got to go in this car. So don't worry, there's plenty of stuff for me to film and show you guys, and we'll kind of do a step-by-step motor removal and motor install. It's pretty easy. It's actually really easy. See you guys in a bit.